Thank you all. I'm Laura Medina, and I'm going to talk. Our plan is that myself and Martha will each talk for about 15 minutes. We'll read a little bit from the book, and then we'll turn it over to 5 of our presenters who are contributors who are in the book. And then I'm going to read a poem prayer from one of the contributors in the book, and this is in the morning prayer section. And it's a beautiful way to honor the directions and to begin our time together. It's called As the Ceremony Begins by Sara Salazar. And she writes, as the ceremony begins, the healer and the wounded warrior womxn call in the 7 directions for protection and guidance, always beginning in the east and following their hearts to the left. They invoke the energies of the east, where the spark of the rising sun welcomes new beginnings. West, the place of great expanse, the setting sun and letting go. North, where fire collides with ice and our compass surely points. And south, the land of our ancestors that is continually warmed by the sun. Above, the home of the sun, moon, and stars which map our destinies. Below, the resting place of our ancestors and motherland for all. And center, the space of reflection and remembrance of the divine within. So there's lots to share, but we're going to focus on some of the main points from the book. On the screen is the cover of the book, which we're really grateful for the artist, Olivia Garcia. It's very fitting for what the book is about. And we feel that the book is really very distinct and unique and very special because it's all written from the heart. All the contributors and the work that Martha and I did as editors, it really comes from our hearts and our thinking hearts. It's a collection of wisdom writings and visual art that's really emerged from the personal and collective journeys on our paths to decolonize our spirituality. And over the years, actually, let me go back to when it all started for me, which literally was about 35 years ago, when I first began on my path of decolonizing my spirituality. And I began to just experience and witness just amazing practices that were returning to our people through ancestral traditions taught to us, or we were learning from Northern Native brothers and sisters, or we were learning with our own intuition or from our research. And I just felt like at some point it all needed to be collected and put together and then shared. And so 4 years ago, we began this project. And but it's rooted in that longer history for myself. But I want to say that the wisdom in this book comes from really deep places. It comes from, as I said, ancestral wisdom, oral tradition, but then also our research and our lived experience and our intuition. And then we have visual art as well. In many ways, it's an offering to our communities and our allies across genders, sexualities, and generations. And we see it really as we're offering our medicine. We're offering our cultural capital, our cultural knowledge, really as a way to help us resist the challenging times that we're living in. You know, it's getting more and more challenging every day. And yes, we need political resistance. We also need spiritual resistance. And the spiritual resistance will empower our political resistance. So it's to help us, address the challenges today, but also deal with those very historical and generational traumas that we've inherited, consciously or unconsciously, and to heal the wounds that fester due to colonization that created oftentimes dysfunctional ways in our families, or we have learned dysfunctional behavior. So we have a lot of healing to do. As one of the elders states, and I quote her, quote, health is a community responsibility. Our actions and inactions affect our well-being as well as the well-being of the entire community, end quote. Also, the book is really an effort or an attempt to reinstate the spiritual status that our non-binary members of our communities held before colonization. That was really important for us to be able to include queer voices. And so 10% of the contributors are queer identified. It's a beginning. There's so much more work that could be done, but we feel it's just really an important beginning because that's all part of our healing. We're understanding that spirituality, this slide is from directly from the introduction, kind of pretty much what I just said. Yeah, it's a step toward restoring the respect and honor that gender fluid and transgender members of our communities held before colonization. And it's really a documentation of how our spirituality has survived. It supposedly was conquered. You know, the indigenous were supposedly all Christianized, but that indigenous spirituality has survived. And the knowledge goes back many generations to the time when the ancestors understood their interconnectedness with each other, with nature, and with the sacred cosmic forces. So we're pulling from very ancient knowledge. We were fortunate to be able to include 10 visual colored images from artists who have really dedicated their work to relaying a spiritual consciousness. And so I won't describe each of these pieces, but I'll just run through them. Because we really felt like each one of them, there's medicine embedded in each of the images. And so we're inviting the readers to just to meditate or reflect on each one of these images and see what it tells you, see what it gives you. This one we're going to hear a little bit more about from the artist Xicanx, who's here with us today. I'll leave it on this image for a bit. We really, when we put out the call widely, we asked for specific ritual guidelines. The original vision was like a guidebook or a handbook. That's not what we got back. We got back just this beautiful mixed genre of writings, everything from short essays to poetry to song, and to specific ritual practices. And so together we realized this is how our knowledge comes to us. It comes to us in a variety of ways, and we learn very holistically. And so this is how our community wants to pass on the knowledge. And so the end result we feel is really, really rich. And we were able to address pretty much the entire life cycle, from morning prayers to evening prayers, but all the major transitions that happen in between. I'll put up the table of contents. I'll come back to this one in a minute. But you can see from the table of contents just the variety of topics that we were able to include. Blessing for newborns and young children, creating art as spiritual practice, creating art through danza. A really important chapter is communing with our dying and loved deceased, helping our loved ones to transition into the spirit world. Dreaming, holistic healthcare. We have some beautiful writings on limpias, self-limpias and limpias for the community. We have teachings on the temazcal, or the sweat lodge ceremony. We have puberty rituals. We have menopause, not necessarily a ritual, but a way to understand menopause in a more empowering way. Meditation practices, life changes, medicinal foods, We have a beautiful chapter on teachings that come from mothers and what they have told their children or would have liked to have told their children. Moon meditations. We really try to capture the breadth of the spiritualities among Xicanx, Latinx communities. Everything from folks who walk what's called the Red Road, purely indigenous ways, to those who are enriched by diverse spiritual traditions such as Buddhism, Santeria, Christianity, and also those who remain primarily Christian but from a feminist and liberationist lens. So we have a few of the Latinx theologians writing for us, and their work is so important to help reconstruct Christianity. And so actually, I want to read one short section of the writing called Sacred Sexuality, and that is by Laura Francis Guerra, who's a Latinx theologian. And she writes, "I pray that we can get to a place in which human beings in our myriad of bodily forms can love unabashedly. I pray that sexual expression can be a pathway to empowerment, particularly for women who have struggled to love themselves fully. Encountering divinity happens through our encounter with one another, for there is no religious experience that occurs outside the context of daily life. It is precisely in the mundane that we come to know God. It is precisely through human touch and in the fulfillment of unspoken desires that we experience the spirit of love incarnate. Inarguably, love and sex represent that which is universal in human experience. There are no saints and no sinners. They are simply people who we meet along the journey, whose bodies must be approached as sacred. May we perceive the eternal light of the Creator and honor the flesh of the incarnate God when we engage one another, for this too constitutes our salvation and liberation." So I think just from that short passage we can see the work that her and many other Latinx theologians are attempting and are doing within Christianity. One other piece I wanted to read is by Ana Onofrio, and I think she really captures what we're doing in this book. She says, "We must first collect the scattered pieces of our stolen cultures, languages, histories, and religious traditions. And then we must sort, discard, reclaim, and recreate ourselves in the images of the sacred we seek. By acknowledging our spiritual authority as healers and co-creators, we are able to take the best of our past and weave new ancient practices on the loom of our sharpest political analysis. And in doing so, we carve out sacred spaces for our aching diasporic bodies to find spiritual identity and home in the powerful legacies of our many ancestors." So again, the book is really a testament that the spirituality of those presumably conquered has survived.
Good afternoon, everybody. So beautiful to be here back in the Bay. So this is from the opening section, offering 3 different prayers for the day. Prayer to the Orishas. Now I bring you to the lady and her true power, the sea. Can you all hear me? Or this sounds weird. Okay. Awakened by dawn and the peaceful sounds of the sea's consistent movement. Maferefuno Watala, thank you for my breath today, for the dream. May your many blessings collectively move humanity toward a more loving, humble, and peaceful dream in this world. May I live this day and every day with an inspired heart. Maferefunya Maya, great mother of all life, keeper of intelligence, guardian of mothers to be, I come before you as I am, to swim in and receive the blessing of your soft, salt waters, to bask in the great peace of your embrace, Mother. On your altar, I offer sweet watermelon, melao, tecaña, and 7 silver coins, in gratitude for life, for love, for all of it. That I be worthy of and not betray the gifts which you have bestowed upon me. Maferefuno lokun, firmament of the oceans, great Orisha of the abyss, bless me with stability and accept in exchange these offerings of flowers, candles, seawater, these writings and the intentions with which I carry myself in the world. Ashe. So one of the reasons why we worked on the text as well is to try to document what the praxis of decolonization looks like. Not the theoretical sort of dialogue around it, but the actual praxis of it, which gives rise to the theoretical, yes? So part of what we wanted to emphasize, as Lara was saying, is that the banishment and the criminalization of our ancestral ethical and ceremonial practices that ensues with colonization disrupts and silences Latin American, Caribbean, indigenous, and African knowledge systems or epistemologies that centered our relationship to the sacred cosmic forces, the natural world, the ancestors, the land, and one another, as well as the knowledge embedded within the ritual practices of the peoples and ways of acting in the world. And there were many of our ancestors who were convinced and forced to deny their indigenous and African lineages. However, as Lara has shown through her own work over the years, and those of you who have consciousness of what our poets and our artists have been documenting for years, we know that that central ethic of trying to understand ourselves as interconnected and in a reciprocal relationship with the world is both foundational to indigenous, is foundational both to indigenous and African values essential for balanced living. So we wanted to also stress the African lineages that some of us carry within us, even though we may not necessarily have full knowledge of that. We do know, as we talk about in the introduction, that there were over 725,000 peoples from Africa brought onto the continent, right, into the colony of New Spain specifically. So coming from that perspective, we're also trying to address what does it mean then for us to take up these ways of living that sometimes end up finding us. Sometimes we have gone out and actually looked for medicine by which to ground ourselves again, or ways of knowledge that can help us make sense of the world that we're living in. But sometimes traditions come and find us. And so I wanted to share with you all a little bit more about how exactly, or I wanted to preface this little essay that I'm going to read to you all, Little Altars, by saying that for me, the santos of Santeria actually came to me. I did not necessarily go looking for them. Little altars, and this is in the section called House Blessings. He sits by my doorway, protector of my home, surrounded by his offerings, a candle, tobacco, a bottle of rum, flowers, toys, and candies, along with Ogun and Ochosi. Whenever I travel, I usually buy him a gift first. He is always on my mind, for through the caracol, his cowrie shells used in divination, he has spoken words of such beauty and profound meaning to me. They have changed my life. I love Elegua, and I do my best to let him know so. My home is a series of little altars. There is at least 1 to 2 in every room. To the great goddess in her various guises, to the agricultural mystery rites, to Yemaya, Oshun, and Irosiki, to San Lázaro, Babaluaye, and Asclepios. 2 of these are from the Mediterranean region. These sacred spaces remind me of my work in this world, remind me of my interconnection with all living beings. They ground me, provide peace in my home, remind me that I am loved and am love itself, and my mundane domestic acts become sacred little rituals, for these altars require attention to keep the flow of energy moving in my life. They bless my home with their presence, make it a place filled with well-being and magic. They make me want to be home. Dressed in white, the last altar, which is also the first, located in the final room of my home, is the one to my ancestors, spirit guides, and Obatala. On it sits a set of clear glasses, each filled with water and one tied with the blue ribbon, as I have been instructed to do. A small lit candle, white fragrant flowers, also complete the altar. This altar completes the circle in my home. Without it, I can do no work with my other altars. For first and foremost, the ancestors, guardian spirits, and guides are acknowledged and fed. On special ritual occasions, a small plate of food is offered here first before anyone else present is served. They are honored for the blessings they bring to my life, for the protection and guidance they have always bestowed upon me, even when I lived unaware of their presence. And so I wanted to stress that, and Lara has actually written about this in some of her other articles, that our place as Xicanx and Latinx peoples, we realize that we are racially mixed women, that we emerge from the borderlands, as Anzaldúa reminded us, from the spaces between cultures, racialized identities, languages, and epistemologies, that we are shaped by Western thought and culture, and thus suffer the wounds of fragmentation, while also benefiting from some of these institutions of higher education, many times making our process of decolonization a little bit more difficult. Many of our contributors hold doctorates in the humanities, the social sciences, and are published scholars. Many of them are artists, cultural workers, teachers, organic intellectuals. But the part that for me, that Lara's work reminds us about is that our place being in the borderlands requires that we approach medicines that either come our way or that we are invited to partake in with as much respect as we can offer. Because they are living medicines and they are living knowledges. And the only way that we can benefit fully from these opportunities that come our way is by treating them with reciprocal respect, right? By offering reciprocity. And so I wanted to kind of emphasize that sometimes, for example, with the Santos, it was very difficult to let them completely in because they require responsibility. And when we are asked to carry particular medicines, we can say no. But the beauty about saying yes is that we are able to grow as people. This is the decolonial praxis that we wanted to emphasize and share with everyone who is willing to pick up the book and read it, to show that there are members, various members of our community in various capacities that have accepted these responsibilities. And I think many of them can attest to the multiple ways in which our lives have shifted and have changed. So, a little bit more about dreaming and dreams being of paramount importance to us as humans. Vine Deloria reminded us that the initial and unexpected contact with the great mysterious power must have happened prior to the development of ceremonies and rituals for seeking a relationship with the spirits. Because it was on the sacred plane of dreaming and dreams that this unexpected contact that Deloria speaks about might have happened. So that among the many life practices of the indigenous societies of the Americas that were disrupted by colonization are the ancient and rich practices of dreaming, wherein dreaming and dreams are viewed as a sacred plane, and the dream body is acknowledged and cared for, and the interpretation of dreams and their meaningful application in observations of the physical world are valid by means by which to acquire knowledge. Dreams can also be prophetic in our lives. They can offer warnings, bring attention to actions that might yet occur. And sometimes our ancestors, known and unknown, and our loved deceased will visit and communicate with us via dreams. And so we were very lucky to have some of the amazing contributors allow us to share with the readers what they have written about dreaming. And I wanted to say that Patricia Gonzalez in her book, Red Medicine, reminds us that it is in the uncontainable dream that living indigenous knowledge also resides, waiting to be called forth. The moon also has played probably one of the longest parts in humanity's life. This is actually an image from one of our contributors, Aida Salazar, who just wrote the beautiful book, The Moon Within. So this is an image taken from her backyard during a moon ceremony that she prepared for one of her daughters. And we're so grateful that she actually wrote as much as she did for the text. So I just wanted to also kind of let us know that for me, one of the first ways that I kind of came to ceremony without even realizing what I was doing was by beginning to sit under the moon. It completely began to shift many years ago what this world means. So how do we begin to rename, rethink, and reshape our understanding of the world as we know it? We begin slowly with a combination of observation and listening in encounters with La Luna. We begin by standing beneath her and taking in her light and the coolness of her rays, different from the warmth of the sun, a different kind of healing. Then we understand and we thank her for being La Socamatli, grandmother. It feels right to say it, so you say it again. La Socamatli, grandmother, simple, humble, and endearing, because she has been there always, always, and will be there long after we are gone. And I'll close with these last words from our last section in the text, evening prayers. Night, I thank you. I thank you for your coolness, for the safety and the comfort you provide, for welcoming me in, for illuminating Grandmother Moon and her siblings, the stars. I thank you for the medicines and the ceremonies you guard. Just as we greet the day, we also greet the evening. We greet the coming of the night. We greet the evening as the sun sinks into the horizon, that liminal moment when the day changes to night. I've greeted the dusk from the hills of northeast Los Angeles and watched the sun go down over the city, across the Pacific, thanking Creator and Tonatiuh, the sun, for another day. And then I've waited to welcome the night. We privilege the productivity of the daylight hours and shun the night. We've become accustomed to denigrating the activities of the nighttime, of the dark. Having grown up Catholic, I was taught to fear the dark and to associate things of this world considered malignant with the night. What a simplistic and misconstrued way to understand the world, particularly because evil and malignancy roam the world in broad daylight, causing economic despair, dropping bombs. It is fair to say that one cannot make the argument that night itself is evil. Night is a time when we can see the moon and the stars, when we can observe the depth of the heavens and our cosmos. It is a time that brings on discovery, not just of the evening, but of ourselves. For as we turn upward, we turn inward and come to realization about our place within the bigger picture. For this reason, creation provided us medicines to pray with during nighttime, such as a jicuri of the northern Mexican desert, and the saint children, what Maria Sabina lovingly called the mushroom, from the southern sierras of southern Mexico and Oaxaca. From these medicines evolved ceremonies for healing, for the night is for healing, holding a deep transformative potential for us within its fold. And in this section, our closing contributors shared 3 different prayers by which they look over their spirits at night, some which we all know. Ángel de mi guardia, which is one of them, right? But it speaks to the tonal, right, within ourselves in the Nahual, which is covered in more depth in the chapter on dreaming. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. The next contributor who will share with us is Patricia Juarez, Chiquiyi Guatu, Mexica Tenochca. She is the founder and leader of Galpuli Hui Papaloto, a cultural... a cultural and educational danza, Mexica Circle, whose purpose is to cultivate Anahuacan ceremonies, tradition, and culture within the existing native Xicanx groups of Northern California. She is the founder of Tucalmecac, or higher educational institutions. Welcome, Patricia.
I want to help my people see how beautiful they are. I want to help them connect with their hearts so that they can walk around confidently, knowing that they are the rightful owners of this highly advanced, beautiful, and highly sophisticated culture. In the Toltec tradition, we can do this through music, poetry, and dance. You see, in the Toltec tradition, it is the arts. The arts are fundamental part of our growing as human beings. Through the arts, we know who we are, we can know about ourselves, we can know about the cosmos, and we can also reach higher levels of consciousness. We can do all this with danza, and even more. And there are several danzantes here that won't allow me to lie. Even though I have been a danzante, I have been a professional dancer. I have been a professional dancer for almost 3 decades. It was really about only 15 years ago that Huehuecoyot, the energy of dance and music, finally chose me. It is what Marta was saying. We don't get to choose. They chose us. They choose us. So about 15 years ago, Huehuecoyot, the energy of dance and music, chose me to be a danzante, to be a Mexica dancer. And that was something that I had longed for a long time, ever since the first time I saw Mexica danzantes back in Mexico City, when I was about a toddler. And I had become so deeply in love with this beautiful, this powerful, this highly intricate and sophisticated dance tradition. My tradition, not any foreign dance tradition, but my tradition, a tradition that my ancestors had created thousands of years ago for me. I was so overwhelmed with happiness and with beauty and with lots of feelings that I didn't even know they existed. The first time I put on my chachayotes, my rattles, the ones that we wear on our ankles, that I just cried and cried and cried. And I see some of you crying right now. You understand. And you don't logically understand, but you feel it, right? Yet, at that time, I was so overwhelmed with all these beautiful feelings that my westernized logical mind wanted to take over, right? And my western mind kept on asking me, why am I crying? Why am I crying? What is this all about? What is this big? Why is such a big deal? I know now that this is bigger than me. I know now that this is beyond any of us. I know now that this is imprinted here in my DNA, in my Moyokoyani. Who knows how far back this goes to? It was then and there that I surrendered, that I surrendered to the vastness of the cosmos. In the danza Mexica tradition, some of us danzantes get to make our own ceremonial clothing, get to design and make our own ceremonial clothing. I am one of those few lucky ones. And just let me tell you more or less how it goes. I wake up in the middle of the night with a very, very precise and specific idea about the next ceremonial dressing that I have to make. It's not that, there's no negotiation. It's not that I want or no. It's either I make it or I make it. And like Marta said earlier, I could say no. But my heart has chosen for me. My heart has chosen that I cannot say no to what the cosmos and to what my ancestors request of me. Nimit samaka campeca tleno shayo, te ofrendo mis lágrimas. Y por favor ayuda a mi papá Marcelino en su transición. I offer my tears to you, beloved sacred energies. It is then, when those energies talk to me, not in English, not in Spanish, sometimes in Nahuatl, most of the time in feelings, sensations, sounds, titzawil or omens. Sometimes my westernized mind takes over and wants me to find a logical reason for this. Luckily for me, a dream comes to the rescue and tells me, you should not waste your time. You should not fall into that, into logical thinking. Start working with your mind, with your hands. Start talking through your yolo, through your heart. Start talking through the nestillo, the design. I then pour all of me into feeling as deeply as I can. What is it that you want me to say? Do you want me to talk about the old energy of love and danza? Oh, Huehuecoyo. Then I have to make a dress of Huehuecoyo. Wait. Somehow, the sensations I'm feeling point me to the obsidian butterfly. Oh, and it's Papalot Mastla then. Soon, the mystic mom, Matlatli Wanse Atl, who was born in 1100, demands me to pray for her and her son, Chikwei Masa. A new ceremonial traje with their symbol is in order. A long time ago, I surrendered to the vastness of the cosmos. A long time ago, I surrendered to the voices of my ancestors. I listened to my heart. I know that I can help my people see how beautiful they are. I know I can help them connect with their hearts so that in turn they can connect with their ancestors, so that in turn they can walk around the world confidently feeling, knowing they are the rightful owners of this beautiful culture, of this highly advanced culture. I know how to do it. Yo conozco el camino. Me llamo Chicoyicoat. My name is Chicoyicoat Patricia Juárez. Tlazo Camati, Ometeo.
The next person who will be joining us as a contributor is Sandra Pacheco, Chicana, Mexicana, Indígena, and a PhD. She is an independent scholar who has taught for more than 2 decades. Her teaching and her research focus on Chicana, Latina, Indígena feminisms and spirituality. Sandra co-founded Curanderas Sin Fronteras, a mobile clinic dedicated to serving the health and well-being of Chicana, Latina, Indígena communities through the use of curanderismo. Welcome, Sandra.
Gracias, Laura. I'm going to use this because I'm not as skilled as Patricia to hold and speak. And when I get nervous, it's easier to hold onto the lectern. In listening to all of those who have come before me, you know, my heart just keeps opening up, and that is what this work is about. Pero antes que nada, ¿cómo están sus corazones? It's one of the things we always ask within our work. And even before that, we say, gracias a la Madre Tierra, the guardianes of this tierra, the lonely land on which we stand. Thank you to your ancestors, la bienvenida, and with respect to my ancestors, le doy la bienvenida. I'm going to try to summarize a lot of this, so then I read a little bit, and hopefully then you read the rest. What I want to offer is how to do a baño espiritual, but it's a very detailed process, so I can't read the whole thing. I did my PhD in psychology, and before I was done with my PhD, I realized there was a problem with psychology, not a problem with me. I soon learned that psychology was in a business. It was very white, it was very male, it was very heteropatriarchal, and it was in bed with capitalism. At the same time, I was about to finish my degree, and I wasn't going to lose that opportunity, but I quickly entered into critical psychology, which is the intersection of critical theory and psychology, and it looks at the ways in which psychology reinforces a status quo as part of control and domination. Now, this doesn't mean, though, that we don't have wonderful therapists out there, and I'm actually have been for the past 2 decades preparing future therapists, but with a different way of being and knowing, and with an intersection with our medicina. Because long before psychology existed, which is only 100+ years old, our medicina existed. We have always had trauma. As long as there has been war, we have had trauma. And we have had our medicina to tend to our trauma. And we have had our old wives' tales. And I remember growing up with my grandmother who practiced curanderismo. People would say, ay, esa vieja con sus locuras. Ay, doña Maye. Sound familiar? But we're learning now, and unfortunately it's been through the legitimizing of science, that our ways are legit ways, and they're very powerful ways. So 7 years ago, when I went through a very deep trauma, I get all choked up because all of you have just spoken, and it's the same story. It's the exact same story. Through the orishas, through danza, and through mismo curanderismo. Even before I had experienced it, I was in the midst of the trauma, and I knew I had to go sweat. I had never done a sweat before. Had to go to Mexico, and I had to go sweat. Unfortunately, the reality is here in the States, to get to a sweat, it's not possible. To just say, oh, you know, therapist, I need at 1 o'clock on Tuesday, are you available? So part of what I've done is in my learning through my teachers in Oaxaca, I spent part of the year in Oaxaca studying, I learned to do sweats and found a way to update them in a way for our modern world. So that's what I'm going to share from, and we'll see how much time I have to start sharing on that. Antes que nada, do you have a home altar? Within Zapotec curanderismo, everything begins with a home altar. It doesn't have to be elaborate, but it does need to include a candle, preferably white. The flame must be tended to and never go out, even if this means using an electric candle as my grandmother did, for fear of fire. While you may select different items for your altar, such as pictures of ancestors, deities, flowers, and incense, the candle is a must. The candle is our way home. The flame of the candle is a light that speaks to something greater. It is the light that connects us to the Creator, the cosmos, to a deep sense of our own divinity. Gazing into the flame reminds us of this. The altar is also where you will set your intentions for healing as you prepare for your baño. What are you holding on to that needs to be released? What do you need to mourn? What pain is your body holding? What do you need to cry out of your body? Once you have tended to your altar, tend to your space and spirit. You will need uninterrupted and private space for your ritual, at least 2 hours right before your usual bedtime. You will need to prepare the herbs, prepare the bath, prepare a tea for yourself, and prepare your bed and bedroom. During all of this, keep copal or sage, palo santo, cedar, or sweetgrass burning and available to smudge yourself with as you feel called to do so. Throughout the preparation phase, stay inward and start prayers, meditating, centering. The first step is to prepare the plants. It will take at least 1 hour to prepare the plants into a murky tea. You'll need an extra large pot, like for tamales, and about a paper bag, a grocery paper bag full of plantitas. Anything you would use for a tea, you can put in there. Las plantitas that you use are very important. Common plants we use for baños are basil, sage, rosemary, rue, pericon, roses, manzanilla, calendula. Feel what you are drawn to, what is calling you. We are taught that the plantitas are our ancestors. They give us so much and have the medicine we need. If harvesting your own plants, first ask permission from them. Hold them and thank them for the work they will help you with during this evening. Thank them for their medicine and wisdom. Set the large pot with plants and water to boil and then simmer for at least an hour. We do not measure, we do it al tanteo. That is, we sense the proportions. You want the water to be very murky, very dark. If you have a large enough bathroom and a portable cooking plate, prepare the plants in the bathroom to avoid carrying the pot. Once the plants are starting to simmer in the water and releasing their medicine, it is time to tend to your bedroom. I'm going to summarize this last part because I'm running out of time. Part of what you're doing for yourself is what a tia would do, an abuela would do for you, and that is give you an intense baño so you can cry out the pain, so you can release the trauma, whatever that trauma is. And you're covered in this deep, hot, simmering tub of water, releasing, and you cover yourself. You put on the vela and you release and you breathe into it. And part of what psychology does, it doesn't allow us to release those emotions. And so part of this reclaiming or reconnecting to or recentering, because some of us never walked away. Anytime you made a té from one of your tias or one of your abuelas, we're still connected to the medicine. So part of what we're doing is reconnecting and crying out the pain because the pain gets so stuck in our body. We're able to do this at home, ideally with someone else accompanying you, and you continue to sweat after you come out of the tub. You go inside to your bed and you have sheets there and you're pulling the sheets out as you sweat. And the idea is that you sleep into that all night. It's a little mini sweat. It's not like the big ones you would get if you actually went to a sweat, but it starts the process. And it starts the moving of the energy that is stuck in you so that you can start the healing. And just looking at around, I could see the knots in the throats because we hold so much. And the talking is good, but it doesn't address the heart and it doesn't address the spirit. So con muchas gracias a los ancestros, all of ours that have maintained this medicine, that we're still able to heal in a way that we've been healing for thousands of years.
Gracias, Sandra. We also have with us today Susie Cepeda, who identified as queer, detribalized Chicana Indígena. Susie is an assistant professor in the Department of Chicana and Chicano Studies at the University of California, Davis. Her research and teaching are in Chicana Indígena spirituality and women of color feminist methodologies. As part of the Santa Cruz Feminist of Color Collective, they published Building on the Edge of Each Other's Battles, a feminist, color, multidimensional lens. Bienvenida, Susan.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm grateful to be here, to have another day of life, to share this moment with you, and to share palabra. It's an honor to be on this sacred tierra, Tali, Afro-Latinx land, and to speak alongside these amazing maestras, maestrex that have already taken stage and that will come. I deeply respect all of them, and I'm grateful to be here with all of you. This book, Voices from the Ancestors, feels to me like a prayer answered of our own documentation, self-determination as Xicanx, Latinx, and indigenous people. Not an end-all or be-all, but a location, a pathway to ancestral connections and lineages that give us herramientas, tools to remember our sacredness, to create spaces of healing, which we've already heard today, of those intergenerational traumas that we've inherited over time in our bones and in our cellular memory due to colonization. And for me, this anthology, which I'm so grateful for, feels like evidence that we are ready to end cycles of violence, injustice, and destruction, and to move towards collective sanación. I have two short pieces in this anthology. One is called Decolonizing Spirit in the Classroom, con Ansaldúa, which was influenced by collective work with Irene Lara and Yolanda Venegas. And I was going to read from that one, but I got the message that I should read from the other one, which is called which is called Creating an Altar for the Healing of Our Younger Self. And so I'll share from that one at this time. Here I share teachings by Estela Roman via Pablo Alvarez on creating an altar for intergenerational healing of our younger self, para la sanación de nuestra niñez. When writing my qualifying exams, I went into complete isolation to figure out how to move forward. The violence of academia had triggered my traumas. I was at a crossroads. At that time, I was engaged in intensive intellectual work, diligently reading and writing about injustices, race, and decolonization. Yet I needed to reconnect with my heart and my spirit to my mind, to align, to find balance again. I was blocked. There were emotional barriers. Mis aires estaban muy presente. I was feeling uprooted and experienced paralysis on the left side of my face. My hermano Pablo, through dialogue and deep listening, guided me to raise an altar, specifically for my childhood, to acknowledge and touch the pain, to relive, relieve, and to breathe into what I had experienced as a child, a non-binary queer feminist Brujex child who lacked language. Creating a sacred altar became the way I unraveled the violence I had grown up with and had silently adopted as my own: domestic violence, sexual violence, and unspoken intergenerational violence. I had internalized the harm and thought it was my responsibility. Full of tristeza, fear, and grief in the process of raising this altar, I realized I had abandoned my younger two-spirit queer self. La había dejado en su miedo. I lovingly spoke and sang to my younger self while bringing together rebozos with vibrant colors, photos, toys, and sacred elements to honor myself and to call for the return of my spirit. Llamando a mi alma, recordando mi niñez, I let my younger spirit know it was safe. I was ready to walk with my whole self in harmony and love. Empezar a caminar en armonía. Pablo had initially visited Estela Roman as a maestra we now share in Temisco, Mexico in 2003, and received her guidance in building sacred altars para la sanación de los niños. He recalls, the way she taught me was to flow with my unknowing. While building the altar, Pablo guided me to find a space where I could build an altar, clean it with a wet towel, light a candle, and place water in it to prepare the space to create. He guided me to burn sage or copal and include the 4 elements: water, earth, fire, or air on the altar. This altar to my niñez became a space for me to cry, to have llanto, to release the deep abandono and tristeza I felt in my heart. I realized that through creating this altar, I was healing a generational cycle of abandonment in my family lineage, particularly my paternal side. I began to pray not only for the healing of my younger self, but also for the healing of my father, mis tíos, and my grandfathers. And now with that same reflection, I pray for my nephew and future generations. Oh, Mateo. And then I go into the ritual there, and I just want to share the last part of the ritual that I offer. Be in ceremony as you create the space. Allow yourself to be present with your whole heart for the duration of this journey. You may experience grief, sadness, and joy as you allow yourself to be guided and you search for and honor sacred items. Take deep breaths, and when it feels difficult, remember your intention and that you are not alone. You can journal, sing, pray, and or sit with your altar daily as a way to release and call your spirit.
Our next and final reader tonight from the anthology, and then we'll be able to open up to Q&A and discussion with you, is Irene Perez. Irene is a Chicana artist and muralist based in Oakland, California. She's a veterana artist of the Chicano movement and was a core member of Mujeres Muralistas, which began in 1973, a collective of Chicana Latina artists whose work significantly inserted issues of gender into the Chicano mural movement. Irene's image of Coyolxauhqui breaking free from patriarchy is an iconic image that helped shape Chicana feminist consciousness. Welcome.
Well, I'd like to first of all thank all the women here that spoke ahead of me. I'm amazed. Thank you. I'm very, very thankful to be part of this. Oh my God, this is amazing. I had no idea when I was 20-something, young, that it would come to this. I was, because of the mural that I in 1994, this was actually a study of the image I was going to put in the Women's Building mural in San Francisco. And we had just put out a book on the maestra piece just last year, to the end of last year. And I did a presentation there on the book and on the mural. And one of the professors actually asked me why did I put the Coyolxauhqui in there? And I thought, oops, that's a big question. And the only way that I can answer was the way I ran into her. Like, I think the other speakers that also spoke, that they somehow come to you. I guess back when I was in my early 20s, I was actually wanted to be a commercial artist until I found out it was, oh no, I don't want to do commercial art. And I ran into the Chicano movement when I was going to art school at the Academy of Art in San Francisco, and since then I never looked back to commercial art, so to speak. And anyway, the Chicano movement, I was very lucky to run into other mujeres artists, other Chicanas, that come from California, different parts of California, some from LA, Oxnard, the Central Valley, and we collaborated on some murals, and that was with the Mujeres Muralistas in the early 70s. With moving, and I remember on our drive over here with Lara, we were talking that back then we had no resources at all to draw back on, or to, we kind of grew up without what you guys see, young kids have got now. It's much more in your face than for us. We had to look for it. We did a lot of trips to Mexico, back home also to Zacatecas, and discovered who we really were, and we started piecing our I guess our lives back together, our spirits, our so to speak, or decolonization, but we didn't call it that then, or something. Anyway, getting back to Koyoshelki. In doing so, back then, I ran into, because we were looking through books, magazines, anything that we can find here in Oakland, California, San Francisco, or Bay Area. I kind of ran into a National Geographic that had an article on the discovery of Koyoshelki in 1978. This was in February. Actually, it was the 23rd of February, so it's just last week there was the anniversary. 23rd? Yeah. And I was like, wow, there's a diosa de la luna in the Aztec, mythology. We had already heard about the Aztecs, back then it was the Aztecs, and now it's the Mexican people. So I was really impressed with the whole idea that it was, because I had seen a lot of images back then of the Azteca, the codices, and it all had to do with war and, cutting the hearts out, and it was like, ooh, I don't know. So, but this was really, it just really like, wow, just kind of blew a door open, and I was on, I guess, some sort of mission after that. I was very lucky to go to Mexico City, I believe in the early 80s, to actually see the excavations of Koyoshelki. So I had a view of Koyoshelki behind a cyclone fence, right at street level, and you can actually just see her just right below your feet, in the spot where she was found and where she landed up. I was immediately starstruck, and I just couldn't believe this was like wow, this is amazing. And it was so beautiful. I thought the design and just the work on it was just so beautiful that I said, wow, I got to do a piece when I come home on Koyoshelki. So when I actually looked at the actual design of Koyoshelki, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. She's in different pieces. She was like a puzzle, all in pieces. And I go, oh, what happened here? It was just like, I couldn't believe it. So I kind of put Koyoshelki away for a little bit because I said, oh, I don't know, I have to figure this one out. And then that's when I read about this was the mythology, the story that I think some of you already know, that she was actually the goddess of peace, and that her mother, Coatlitle, was going to have a son that was called Huitzilopochtli. Okay, yeah. I'm actually Huichola, so now it's a little hard for me. So anyway, I was like, oh no, what happened here? So it took me a little while to actually figure out what I was going to do. And in turns, I had found a little, I had been to Tijuana, and I actually found a little reproduction, little head made out of clay of Koyoshelki's head, just her head. And I said, okay, I'll take it home, see what I can do with that. And when I got home, I said, okay, kept looking at it. And when I was looking at it, in drawing it, I couldn't figure out if she had her eyes closed or open, And I looked under, and finally I said, okay, I'm going to open her eyes. And that's how I started with Koyoshelki, putting her back together. So I did a series of drawings and paintings that is actually putting her back together. And in doing so, I was actually putting myself back together, and so it ended with the last painting I did was at the Women's Building, where she's actually breaking out of the stone. And as Laura mentioned, or somebody mentioned, the patriarch, it was the patriarch, chains that had us, I mean, I knew it too, but it was something that happened to me personal. It was, different. Yeah. But anyway, I think I'm all out of time now, so. And the clock, yep.